Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hackschool. This is section 3. We'll be talking about JavaScript and the DOM API. Don't worry if you don't understand it yet. We'll talk about it in a moment. My name is Galen. I'm one of the Hack officers. And yeah, let's get started. But before we go into web development, we have some announcements. Jody, do you want to take over?
Yes. All right. So this Friday we have our intern apps due. So like for those of you guys like on our Facebook or on the Discord, you've probably seen us talking about this. Basically, you can apply to 3 different committees. Hack is also taking interns this year. If you join as an intern, you'll get to sort of work with the officers behind the scenes to make workshops, plan events, be friends with us if you aren't already. But I guess at a closer level. So yeah, apply. Definitely apply to Hack if you're interested in like Hack School and the stuff we've done so far. Do this Friday, and it should be very very fun. Yeah, everyone should apply. All right, back to you, Galen.
Okay, so here's the slide and the README link. Um, don't worry, don't panic. The link is also down to the bottom left of the screen that will be available whenever the slide is up. So yeah, take your time. And yeah, if you want to follow along today, if you want to follow along, you would want to have access to the README. You will need to download something from our README. Okay. Here's the attendance code for this week, Chonker. I think Eugene already said it in the chat. And we also have a feedback form. If you can fill it out at the end of the workshop to provide us with valuable feedback, that would be great. And it comes with a raffle, and you have a chance to win some prize. Take your time, everyone, if you want to get points at the membership portal. Okay. One thing that I do want to stress before we start is that if you have any questions, right? If you have any confusion about anything, right? Let's say you get confused from what I'm saying, you get confused about some sections of the code, you get confused about a certain slide, feel free to ask in the chat. Our mentors will be here to help you and answer your question. And it's always my bad if I don't explain stuff clearly enough to you guys. So don't hesitate to ask questions. We'll also pause in the middle to get any questions as well. Okay. Oh, also remember that we do have a Discord, both a ACM Discord and a Bloom Discord. You can also get your question up there and you can answer them. Okay, let me turn off the timeouts. Okay, so the goal of this workshop, we're gonna be talking about the DOM, DOM. Don't worry if you don't know what it is yet. But the goal of this workshop is to make your website interactive, right? Remember before, we can put contents into our web page using HTML. We can put some styling, make it pretty using CSS, but there's still some elements lacking, right? We still can react to certain things. Like, for example, when a user clicks something, like what do we do about it? When user types something, what do we do about it? So the DOM is all about making our web page interactive. And happy Halloween. This is a picture of a dog dressed in a costume. And this is the reason why I'm wearing this, I guess, blind. And the reason why I put this here is that, this workshop is historically difficult. And we made it simple this year so we can follow. But don't stress out, right? If you want to follow along the code, If you want to follow along with the coding, that's fine. However, if you ever get lost in the middle, right, you get busy typing and then referring back to the code and be like, oh, what did I just type? You know, like what am I supposed to put here? Don't panic. You can just leave it out and sit back and relax, listen to what we have to say, because all the steps that I do is recorded in the README. So you can just follow that and you'll be able to exactly replicate what I do after the Hackschool. But I don't want you guys to miss out on the explanations and how stuff work. So if you ever get lost, don't panic. Sit back, relax, and just chill out. Okay, so I guess that's the thing. And if you do code along, let me show you what to do. So you go to the README for this week. Okay, we'll go to the session 3 DOM API. So this is the README for this week. And if you see, let me make this bigger. And if you see, there is a folder called demo starter. We can just click on, oh, sorry, not this file, my bad. There's a file called demo starter zip, this one. If we click on it, and you see here that there's a download button, right? Just click that, and you're gonna get a zip file. And if you get a zip file and you unzip it, right now, I am unzipping it with the, and I got this folder. So this folder, if you look at it, it contains a HTML file and a CSS file. All right, and we can open this
Dan,
within.
can you make the thing bigger? Like we can't really read the text.
I guess this is the biggest that you can go. Can I make this even bigger? I guess not. This is the biggest as you can go. Yeah. Can I zoom in on Zoom? I don't think so. But yes, you're gonna see the index.html and style.css file. And then we can open it with VS Code. So for example, if I go to my VS Code, this is my VS Code. I already have something open, but if you do want to open it, here's how you would do it. You would go to VS Code. I'm gonna, oops. Here's our new VS Code window. We'll click open folder here in the start section, or you can go to the top and do file and open. What you can do is to find the folder that you have. For example, I put it here right now. It's called demo starter. It's right here. And if you click open, you will get file right here. So this is gonna be the coding screen that I'm gonna show you guys when I do any code. This will be in this screen, right? So what we have here is the code editor. Right now I'm using VS Code. Down here on the right bottom corner, I have like text description of what I'm doing so that you don't get lost. If you open the index.html file that was given to you within the zip, you will see this, this website. And we, of course, have the console down here. And this is what we're going to be working with today, where we will try to build a clock. Okay, somebody asked how to download the demo starter. So I'm going to show it again. If you go to the README for this week, so this is the README for this week. And you have a demo starter.zip here. And you click it, and it will bring you to another screen where there's a download button, and you can download it right here. Okay, so that's the coding setup. It might take some time for you to set up. And somebody asked in the chat, how do you get the code of this file? Again, you go to the README and there's a zip file. You download it. You click on it, download it, and then you will get a zip file and extract it. And Christy just put a link inside the chat. Thank you. You can also follow that link. Download the zip file, unzip it, and then you will get all the code files that you need. It will be 2 files, index.html and style.css. I guess we'll give everyone like 2 minutes to sort it out. Meanwhile, I'll put on some music. The question is that, do we open it in Chrome and click inspect? Yes, you open the index.html file in Chrome and you click inspect to get the console. But to open it in the code editor, you'll use your code editor. In VS Code, you can click file and open that specific folder that you unzip. If you have trouble setting up, raise question in the console, in the chat. I mean, not the console. and if you don't get it to work, it's fine. Again, like I said, you can sit back, relax, and try to figure it out after. Our README contains all the instruction to how to do it. Okay, now we can start getting into our actual content. Great. Okay, so previously in last section of Hackschool, we did a lot of JavaScript coding. It was a lot of fun. Inside this thing called the console, right? You find a web page, you right-click and inspect. It's gonna bring a console up, and you can type your JavaScript code in there. And then it executes, gives you some outputs. You do some console log, and you play around with it. That's fun. That's fun. But there's one problem with this, right? Like, if you haven't noticed yet, once you close the browser, all the code that you have written goes away. You lose all of it, right? If you want it back, the only way for you to keep it is to retype the code that you executed before in the console. That's not great, right? That's frustrating. When we run a web page, we don't want to keep retyping it every time we open our web page. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna save our JavaScript code into a JavaScript code file. So how do we do that? I'm gonna switch over and you guys can see this. So we will try to keep our code inside a JavaScript file. So how do we do that? Well, first, we'll create a JavaScript file. Inside VS Code, you can do it, or if there's other ways that you prefer to create a file, you can do it your way too. But in VS Code, I just click this and I type script.js. So this is going to create a JavaScript file right inside the same folder, index.html and style.css. Right now it is empty, it has nothing, as you can see. So to put our code down here, I'm just gonna put like one simple lines of code, right? A console log, let's say hello If you see me, it works. So we put a line of JavaScript code in there. It console logs something, and when something is console logged, we expect to see it inside the console, right? But the problem now is that, like this JavaScript file has no relationship to our web page. Remember, our web page is defined within the HTML file, right? So to sort of link it, to link the script file to the HTML file, we'll go to the HTML file. And the HTML file will go to the body tag just before the ending tag, which should be line 11. I'm going to add a new line, and then I'm going to type script source equals script.js, and then I'm going to put a closing tag to it. So this is the line of code that we changed. So this is how we specify a script file within our HTML file, right? We provide it with the file name, which is script.js. And then we say that, oh, it is a script, right? With a script tag. And you use source src to indicate, like we're using this file. And you might remember this src from image, and it is the same, right? Because image, you're referring to a file, and in the script, you're also referring to a file. Okay, so it means that our web page index.html is now aware of this script.js file. And what should happen is that when we load our web page in the browser, it should execute this file, script.js, for us. And inside the script.js file, remembers that it has a console log that prints, hello, if you see me, it works. And you should see it in the console. Let's see if that's the case, right? If I go to my browser, I would reopen it again. When I say reopen, I meant refresh. I'm just going to click this refresh button. And then you see something popped up here in our console that says, hello, if you see me, it works. That means that, this script file has been linked successfully to our HTML file. That's how we save our code of JavaScript code inside a file so that we don't forget or lose it. And every time that our web page gets opened, it would execute this file. Any question up to this point? And somebody asked, how do we view the console? So you right click and you click inspect. Okay, so at this point, we should have linked the JavaScript file to our HTML file, and we see the console log output inside the console. All right. Cool. So next thing I'm going to get to is finally our goal for this workshop, the DOM. So what does the DOM stands for? So the DOM stands for Document Object Model. Confusing, I know. So what does these three words here, right? So what does these three words here means? So the documents refers to our HTML documents, right? Remember, HTML is a way for us to specify content in a structured way, like a document, right? We have titles, paragraphs, images, so it's like a document. So the documents refers to our HTML file, and the object refers to the object within JavaScript. So last time we talked about objects in JavaScript. You use the brackets and the keys to put values and methods inside an object. So the document object model means that the browser is going to represent the HTML documents as an object for us. So what does this actually mean, right? This is still very vague. What does like representing a document as an object means? It means that the browser will define a variable called documents for you. So let's see what it is, right? So I'm in the console right now. I'm going to type console log. And since the browser has defined something for me, I'm just going to type documents. So documents variable is a variable that has been defined for us, and it is an object that represents the entire web page itself. So if I enter this, and if I hover over the input, it actually highlights the entire web page for us, meaning that this corresponds exactly to our page. And if you click open it, and you will see our entire HTML inside this document object. This means that JavaScript represented our documents, aka HTML, as an object called documents. So that is what the DOM is about, right? We represented our documents as an object. That's okay. That's kind of cool, right? That's kind of cool. But the problem here, right? We have another problem. Yes, we have documents. We have documents object, but then we don't care about the entire web page. We might want to only focus on, like, let's say the button, right? Or this clock face, right? I want to change the text or whatever. Like having access to the entire web page doesn't help us. So what do we need to do in that case? All right. We need to find a way to access elements inside the page. But before that, I'm going to quickly do a poll before I give away the answers. We will do a poll on something from last time. So I'm going to launch poll number 2. Yes. So right now, we're having a poll on CSS selectors. So if you remember, CSS selectors are the ways that you target specific elements on the page and apply style to them. So this poll is about how do you select certain elements on the page based on some properties and to style them. And I'm gonna give you guys a few minutes to do the poll. Can anyone see the poll, or is it just me that's seeing it? Okay, cool. Okay, let's take like 3 minutes to do this poll, and then we'll come back. If you want some hints, feel free to go back to the previous README or look at the slide for this section. Okay, I think it is good to end it there. I'm gonna start the poll. And let me share the results. Okay, so this is a review on not JavaScript, CSS selectors, right? You select specific elements and then you say how you style it, right? Let's say I want it to be this color, I want it to be this this wide or this tall. You know, this is how you do it. And inside our style.css file, some of these are actually being used. So let's look at the first question. To select a class name, you use a dot. Indeed, you use a dot to select a class name called material button. And the second question as well, yes, with an ID, use a hash symbol to select something with an ID. And you can see it right here inside our style.css file. We have the hash clock dash face is used to select an element with an ID clock face. So to select a tag, right, we simply say the tag name without any modifying symbols, right? For example, right here, we're targeting the body tag. Then we just say body. For the button, we'll just say button. And we don't use any symbols to say that. And the fourth question, yes, it is a trick question. We never talked about it, but now you knew about a new way to select CSS elements. Yes, let's say there's a paragraph tag inside a span tag, and you want to select that. The way that you would do it is through the greater than symbol, which indicates how to select a nested elements within another one. Okay, so that is great. That gave a review of CSS selectors, and it's very relevant to how we are going to select our individual elements. So remember, an object, it can contains methods. So in this case, the document object actually contains a method called query selector. And the way query selector work is that they select specific elements based on the CSS selectors. So how would you use it then? So to call a method, remember we use a dot, like document dot query selector, and you pass in a string, which is the CSS selector. In this case, we're selecting a elements with the ID clock face, right? And what it is going to return is an other object. And this time it is an object representing a individual elements that we selected through this selector. Okay, so let's try and do that to our web page. So I'm gonna go back to the page. I'm gonna go to script.js. Right, I'm also going to open my HTML. So looking at this, our HTML file, we notice that there is a div with the ID clock face. So in order to select that, what we would do is going to declare a constant called my clock face. And what it is going to equal to is documents.selector. And what we're going to pass in is the ID clock face. Since this is too long, I'm going to break in 2 lines for you guys to see. But you guys can type it in only 1 line. Yes, to answer the question in the chat, it is indeed the CSS selector span greater than P. It is selecting a P within a span. I mistyped the question. So I apologize about it. Okay. So this is how we select a element, right? So to prove that we have actually selected it, we will console log in this file, and I'm going to log it out. And again, if we refresh, we are able to see that we printed out our elements. And if you hover on it, it highlights the elements that we selected, right? So let's try to select something else. We also want to select this button, right? So how do we select this button? We go back to our HTML code, see that, oh, this button has a class, it's called btn, and the way we select that is const my button equals documents query selector dot btn, right? Remember, it is a class name, so we use the dot symbol to indicate that we're selecting something with a class name. And we can also select the body tag. The body tag will be documents query selector body. Since it is, we're using the HTML tag name itself, we don't have to add any symbols, right? We can also log it out. So we have selected 3 elements, stored them in variables, and printed it out. And if we refresh, and we see all of them show up in our console, and we hover over them, they all highlights the part that we have selected. Okay, that's about accessing elements. What is the point of accessing elements then? It is to change. We can change something about them, right? We can change the appearance of the elements, right? We can change. Let's say we want to show something else. We don't want to show like 0001 AM. We want to show like some other time. We can change the content. That's the HTML part. We can also change the style, which is the CSS part, right? Let's say we want some elements to be red instead of black, or we want it to be like with the thick border around it. We can change the CSS as well. And we can also remove the elements entirely and force them into an existential crisis. But unfortunately, we're not going to teach you how to do that today. But feel free to Google and find out how that works. So yes, you can remove an elements entirely from the web page as if it never existed. Okay, so how do we manipulate elements? So remember that the elements are represented also as an object, right? So the sort of the properties of these elements are being put inside the fields of the object, which we can access with keys, right? So let's do an example. Let's say I want the time to say something else instead. I would say my clock face dot inner HTML equals, let's say 20:59 p.m. Because this is the horrible time at which all the homeworks are due. And if we refresh, we see that it changes the clock face, right? Instead of showing 00:01 a.m., it's going to show 23:59 p.m. instead. So we have changed something's content. We can also change their style, right? So let's say instead of the text right now, I want the button to show up with red text. So the way that we do that is by saying, I want my button style, right? It has a style. Whoops, it is not what I want. We have a style. Wow, this autocomplete. We have a style property, and we say the color is going to equal, let's say, red. So what we expect is to see our button turn red. So if we refresh our page, we should see a red button, indeed, the text. Okay, let me answer some question in the chat. So one question that we get when we declare initialize my clock phase, how did it know to print out the same time as in the HTML file when you did console log my clock phase? I'm assuming that the query selector methods is doing something, but I'm still unclear as to what query selector does. Okay, so I guess the explanation to that is that the JavaScript, I guess the browser, take your HTML file, and they sort of represents each element as an object. And when the JavaScript, we use the document.query selector to select a certain element, JavaScript returns the selected object representation of that element. And when we print it out, it prints out like literally, I guess, the HTML code that's inside. And how does inner HTML work? Does inner HTML work on every object? I would say yes, but they may not show up. Let's say you're trying to modify, let's say, the inner HTML for a like a image tag. It might not show up. And inner HTML changes. So you can think of inner HTML as like changing the HTML code directly. But in this case, we're just putting the text inside. But you can put HTML code inside as well, and it's gonna work the same. Okay, I think people are running into issues of like not printing out stuff. So a few things that you need to make sure is that first you have linked the file correctly, and it has to be linked at the end of body. It cannot be linked before the elements. All right, you have to link it at the bottom of the body tag. If you link it somewhere else, it might not work. I guess that might be a catch-all that you need to watch out for. And save your files always. And a way to test that, if you can access an element, if you write your query selector correctly, you simply copy and paste it inside the console. And if it works, it prints out that element. You can also verify your code like that. Okay, so we have a way to manipulate the style of the elements. We also have a way of manipulating the contents of these elements. What do we do about color? So I'm going to take a detour away from JavaScript, and I'm just going to talk about how computer represents color. All right. So how does represent, up till this point, we have been using color nouns such as black, pink, yellow, brown inside our CSS to specify the color, right? Right now we just use the word red. But there are so many possible colors out there. Like you can assign English words to them one by one, and it's really hard to remember, right? So how does computer represents color then? So you might have heard of RGB. It stands for red, green, and blue. And the way that color works in computer is that it is any color is formed by the mixture of these three colors, right? Red, green, blue. And tuning the amounts of color that you mix gives any sort of color that you see. And we're representing colors as three numbers, right? How much red do you want? How much green do you want? And how much blue do you want inside this color? And we're using hexadecimal inside computer to represent it. So for example, right here, we have 97 units of red. What does that mean, right? It means we want 97 in base 16, which is 151 in base 10 units of red color. And the ranges that you can get is, well, you can get 0, like you don't want red in your color at all, or you can get all the red. That means FF. So if you do the math, FF in base 16 is 255. So the amount of red, green, and blue determines the color of the mixture of the color, right? So it is still unintuitive. Let me just show you one thing, all right? If you go to Google and you Google color picker, right? Let me make this bigger. If you Google color picker, and awkwardly my language is set to UK, so you see a color with a U. If you Google color picker, you can actually get this nice thing that you can play with the color. And under here, you can see that you have a hex code representation. So right now, my color is at some sort of red. And you can see the RGB values, right? Since this is red, it has a lot of red, right? It has 235 units of red. So if I want something that's like blue, let's say, right? And I'll tune it to like the max blue, you can see that you have a lot of blue, barely, like no green at all, and barely any reds, right? So this is how you get different colors. And let's say you want this color, the green color, it has a lot of green, 255 units of green. And this is how you get any sort of possible colors within your browser. You can get some shades, different shades of purple, right? You can get like a darker shade of purple or like a brighter shade of purple using this color picker. All right, let's do a little poll on how good we are at knowing colors. I'm going to launch a different poll, and yeah, you guys, we'll give you around 3 minutes to do this poll. You can look at the color code and try to figure out what color it is, all right? And this is gonna be sort of a theme for the rest of this workshop, but we'll see. Meanwhile, I'll take any question in the chat. Okay, I don't think any questions there yet. Again, I want to stress again. If you lost track of the code, it's completely okay. Sit back and listen, and we have all the steps documented inside README. You can always refer back to it when you need to, and don't worry about the code itself. Pay attention to the content. I think that's gonna be more helpful. Somebody asked, how can we translate the hex code to number? Good. We have an example actually on the slide that we can walk through. So for example, right in this color code, we have 97, which represents 97 amounts of red, and it is in base 16. So base 16 means that the rightmost digit is 16 to the power of 0, and the second rightmost digit is 16 to the power of 1. So what we see here is that we get 9 times 16. That's the second rightmost digit, and then we have the rightmost digit 7 times 16 to the power of 0, which is 1. So we ultimately get 151 in terms of base 10. So that's how you translate the hex code to numbers. But you don't need to worry about that math because you don't have to know how it works. Just find a color that you like. On the color picker, you think this sort of cyan color looks good, you just copy the hex code and use it that way. Don't need to know exactly how the math works. Good question. How do I like being a Hokage? Yeah, I guess I like being the most powerful ninja in the Leaf Village, indeed. We can manipulate. Okay. Okay, I think I'm gonna end this poll right now. Okay, I'm ending this poll. I'm gonna show the results. I think you guys have nailed it. It is exactly correct. For example, for FF 4 zeros, because all the red digits is on, but the green and blue digits are off. That means the color only has reds in them. So this has to be the red color. And the same for the blue. And an interesting one is all Fs, 6 Fs. What does it mean? It means all the colors is turned on to the max. And if you know about like some physics of light, right? It's like the sunlight's color is like what quote unquote white because it's composed of all the different colors, and it is the way that it works in RGB as well. And if you have 87, 87, 87, meaning that red, green, and blue are on the same level but toned down, meaning stuff less brightness, you're gonna get some shade of gray. And the combination of red and blue gives magenta. And fun fact, right? You notice that the color names are kind of weird. We have color named chocolate, we have color named lime, we have color named seashell, and like light salmon and peach puff. All of these color names are valid CSS color names. Just a fun fact. If you put them in CSS, they actually all works. But yes, that's how CSS color code works. And instead of saying, hey, I really like that peach puff color on your website, you wouldn't say that. You would give other people their hex code instead. Okay. Let's try to apply that to our webpage, right? So how would we, let's say, change the color using the hex code? So let's say we want to change the background color of our web page. So we're going to change the background color of our body. Remember, changing CSS, we use the style key. And this time we're going to use background color. Can't spell background color. And to use a hex code, we use the hash key. Like it's the same as the ID, but it doesn't have a relationship. And let's play a little guessing game. I'm gonna type a color code, and you guys can, I guess, type in the chat like what color do you think this is? All right. So what color is FFB1B1? You don't have to name it exactly the right CSS name. Just sort of estimate like what shade of color would it be. But one interesting thing to note here is that in CSS, if you want to set background color, you would use a dash, right? You would use background color like FFB1B1, This is CSS, all right? But then when you're in JavaScript, we use something called camel case, which means the first letter of each word is capitalized, and in this case, except the first word. And this is how we specify in JavaScript instead of using the dash in CSS. That's just like a side note. Okay, so time to review what this color actually is. It is some sort of pinkish color. And yeah, and I think this is a time for us to take a break. We're almost an hour into the workshop, and I think we will be back at, let's give everyone 10 minutes. So it would be 7:07, am I right? Is this 7:07 or 6:07? I don't remember.
7:07 on PT time.
Okay. We'll come back 7:07 PT. Yeah, well, I'm in a different time zone, so I don't exactly know. We'll come back at 7:07 PT. Keep dancing, do it on the floor, whatever. Get water, stretch your back. Don't sit in front of the computer for too long. Relax your eyes. That's one. You don't wanna overuse your eyeballs. Okay, we'll be back. Any questions, feel free, throw them out in the chat. I'm gonna be looking at this for the break, so I can help answer a lot. I feel like I'm obligated to share the playlist sometimes. A Hokage never reveals his jutsu easily to people from other villages. I'm sorry. Okay, it's right now 7:07 PT. I think we can keep going. Hopefully the lo-fi is not making anyone falling asleep because I'm feeling pretty sleepy right now. Okay, I'm gonna pause it. On the notes of 7:07 PT, right now our clock doesn't move at all. It is stuck at this horrible time 23, 59, 59. You feel the pressure of like, God, I got to do my assignment and submit on CCLE. So we need to be able to change our time, right, inside our clock face. But more importantly, in order to change our time, how do we get the current time, right? How do we get current time to work? We need that. So what we're gonna do is that we are gonna try to get a current time of whatever moment it is right now. So how do we do it? We introduce a new operator called new, and we create a new date object, right? So the date object is a predefined object for us, right? It is already there within JavaScript. It is provided. We don't have to do anything. It's just available to us. And the new keyword basically says that, oh, I want a new date object from you. And you see that there are parentheses for passing in parameters, just like function, you can. But in this case, we don't need to pass in anything. If you say new dates with an empty set of parentheses, we are just saying, give me the new dates object, all right? So we can try out inside our browser. Inside our browser, let's just do like a simple console log, new dates, which give us a new date object, right? So it prints out the current date and time. And since right now I'm in China, so it says GMT +8 right now. So this is how you get your current time. So getting the current time object is not enough, right? We need to format it into a string that says like something, something, something PM. We don't want like Thursday, October 29th, 2020. We want none of that. We just want, a time string. So how can we do that? Let's try to write a function that changes the time string inside, our clock face object or elements, right? So how do we do that? We go to, remember how we declare a function, we use const. Let's call this function take because this is going to change this is going to get called every second later. And remember the arrow syntax, right? We have empty set of parentheses to indicate that we're not taking any parameters. And we create a new date object, new dates, right? This creates a new date object. As we have illustrated before in the slide. How do we get a time string? So again, the dates object is an object with built-in methods. So for example, it contains a method called toLocale time string. So toLocale time string is a function that returns a string, a time string formatted according to a locale. What is a locale? Locale means a combination of country or geographic location and language. Like, let's say we want to format our time string the way that people in the US formats it, the people who speaks English in the US formats it. We will use EN-US. EN means English and US means, United States, how people format it in the US. So we're it's gonna return a string. So we're gonna put that inside a time variable. You guys can still see it. And now this time is a string, right? It is the formatted time. So what we can do, we have seen before, we can change the inner HTML of our clock face, right? So I'm gonna put this line 10, I'm gonna put it in the comment first. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna say my clock face dot inner HTML equals the time string that we have gotten from our toLocale time string methods in the date object. Okay. this function is defined, but it's never called. I'm just calling it down there. Right after it is being defined, I call it once so that it gets the current time, sets it to the inner HTML of our clock face elements. So what I'm expecting to see right now is that I refresh my web page. It executes the file, the JavaScript file. It executes the take function because we called it. It's going to get the current date, time, and format it into a string, and we set it into inner HTML. We should be able to see it on our screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try refreshing our page, and indeed, it says the current time. It's right now 10:13 a.m. in where I am right now. It might say a different time for you because you're in a different time zone probably. And anyway, it's going to say the current time. And if you refresh, the time is going to change, right? Like the seconds take, and every time you refresh it, it sort of changes because it always updates it with the newest current time. Okay. So here's the problem. How do we make this thing updates, right? We want this take function to run every second. We want this take function to be able to, updates our clock every second so our clock actually looks like it's ticking. So how do we do that? So we're going to introduce a function that is defined for us. Again, it is provided by the JavaScript a language itself. It is available to us. This function is called setInterval. So what does setInterval do is that it takes in a function as the first parameter, and it takes in a number, which is the time in milliseconds. And it means that how frequently do you want to call this function? So for example, right here on the slide that you see is that setInterval take, which is the function that we just defined, for 1,000 seconds. So how, not 1,000 seconds, for 1,000 milliseconds, and 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So basically we're saying that setInterval executes the take function every 1 second, all right? So we're gonna put this code inside our browser. I'm gonna go over here, all right? So to update our clock every 1 second, instead of saying take, I'm gonna say setInterval take 1,000 milliseconds, right? And the way that, yes, as you can see here, we can pass function as parameters into other functions as well. That's allowed. And we just use the name of the function to do it, right? Right now it's take. We're saying that, take every 1,000 milliseconds, which means every second. So what I expect to see right now is that I refresh my browser, this code get executed, setInterval get executed, and it's gonna call take every second so that theoretically, at this point, my clock should work like a clock it takes, and we should see it like that. So let's see if I refresh and if it does that. And yeah, it does. It's saying my current time, 10, 16, 37, 38 seconds, taking slowly, and our clock works like a clock right now, which is fantastic. Okay, any question up to this point? Let me see if there's any question in the chat. Okay. So there's one question. Why don't we need parens for the function being called if the function has a function parameter? So it is just part of the syntax, right? So you can see right here, right? So if take doesn't take in any parameter, and if we just put take, it's like we're using, we're not calling it, right? Right now, setInterval, we're not really calling the function. But then if you put parentheses around it, it indicates that we're calling the function. So there's difference, right? So the parentheses is part of the syntax that you indicate that I'm executing this function. Okay. Okay. When I pass in the function, I don't include the parentheses on syntax. Yes, because we're not calling it right here, right? Set interval calls it for us. We don't need to do the call. We don't put the parentheses here. We let set interval does it underneath. We don't call it right here. Okay. Okay. Clock is ticking. Time is flowing away. I'm going to go back to the slide and our webpage got a little bit more dynamic. It updates every second, so it ticks like a clock. Looks less static. You see stuff moving, changing. But this is not interactive enough to a certain point, because when a user does something to your webpage, let's say the user goes to the button, find it curious. What happens if I press it? When you press it, nothing happens. Right? Like I go to our webpage, I press this button, nothing happens. I want something to happen. I wanna see some magical thing to happen. It is not yet interactive, right? So how do we get there? How do we react to user interaction or user inputs? So in order to sort of react to user actions, we introduced two concepts inside JavaScript. So the two concepts are events and listener. So what is an event? An event means something happened, right? That's like a dictionary definition of it. In terms of website, it means that user clicked a certain button. That's an event, right? User clicked something, or the user scrolled on the web page. That is also an event because something happened there. So all the interactions that users do is represented as an event. And when there's an event, that means something happened. And then what is listener then? So listener listens for a certain event. So when an event happens, the listener job is to call a function. What it does is that it listens, keep listening. The user click on that thing. The user click on that thing. If the user click on that thing, it is going to go and call a function, right? So this is the job of a listener. So a listener and events together, we can react to user interaction, right? Because we can use the listener to listen to a certain events and then react to it by calling a function, and the function can change, the colors or change some contents on the page to react to user interaction. How would we do that then? Let's go to the code itself. So again, we're gonna first define a function called set background color to something. And it's gonna be a function. Again, no parameters, because it's simply changing something. Let's say we want to change the background color of the entire web page. We'll change the background color. Again, another color guessing game. We're gonna change it to B1B1FF. All right. Guess what this color looks like. Type your answer in the chat. So we have this function. Let's say that when the user press this button, we want the color of our web page to change, and we can do so by calling this function, right? Okay, so we have a function to execute, but where's the events and the listener, all right? So the way that we sort of create a listener that listens for events is by using the DOM again. So the DOM, representing elements as objects, again provides very useful methods for us to add listener. And literally the name of the function is called add events listener. And what this means is that you're listening for the events on the button, not like the clock face, not other parts of the website, just the button. You're listening for the events on this button. So we're calling at event listener. So what events are we listening for? So we want the user to click our button and it's going to change the color of our web page. So we're listening for a click events. So events is represented as a string, is literally called tick. All right. And when when the user click on my button, what I'm going to do is call the function set background color to something. All right. And what we do is, again, as before in set interval, we passed the function tick to the set interval function. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass set background color to something to add event listener. So we're just going to pass it. And it's too long. I'm going to break into 2 lines so you guys can see better. Again, you don't need to put it into 2 lines. I'm just doing it so you guys can see it. So you're passing set background color to something without parentheses. Again, we're not calling it right now. We are letting our listener decide when to call our function. And the way that it decides this timing is through the events, right? We listen for click events on our button, and if it happens, we're going to execute this function. Okay. So at this point, again, what I expect to see on my web page is that I refresh. Oops, I forgot to change the slides. I refresh the web page. And when I click the button, it's going to invoke my set background color to something function. It's going to change the background color of my web page. Let's see if that's the case. I'm going to refresh. Good. I'm going to press. And voila, our background color changes to a, I don't know how to say it, a purplish color. I don't know. But this is the color. Let's see if it matches what you expect to see. Okay, so that's how we react to user events. We create a function to be called when the events happen, and the way that we listen for the events is through adding a events listener. And the way that we add event listener is through the DOM, because the DOM formats or represents elements as object, and they provide very useful methods for us to achieve all these things. Okay, so that is the events listener. And to break it down again, right, you can see the syntax is here. When my button is clicked, I'm going to execute set background color to purple. I use a different name so that you guys don't, guess the function name right away, guess the color right away. But again, to reiterate, you have my button. What elements do we care about? Where are we listening for the events? We're listening on the button, right? And we add event listener. We're listening for the click events. And we are executing the set background color function when the click events happens. Okay. To sum up, all right, you guys learned a lot today. You guys learned what is the DOM, how do we access elements with query selector, how do we change them, how computer represents color, and how do we schedule function calls with set interval, and how do we react to user interaction with the events and the listener. So you guys have learned a lot. Again, if you didn't follow through completely on our code demo, don't worry, sit back. Everything I did is documented on the README, and I'm gonna say that one thing is that our README actually contains a complete solution, like exactly. It is called, if you can see it here, it's called demo product, and if you go here, you can see all the code that I did, the script.js, index.html, everything is in here. So don't worry about not following. And yeah, that is the workshop for today. But before I get to the challenges, remember to fill out the feedback form. We really appreciate your feedback. And next week, we have an advanced CSS workshop. We're going to teach you how to do even cooler things within CSS. Same time, Wednesday, 6 p.m. PT. Please look forward to that. Okay, so I think we still have time, like half an hour before 11. I think we're just gonna hang in here and chill. If you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat or just unmute your mic to speak them out. And if you don't have any questions and you want some extra challenge, we have prepared 2 challenges for you. So the first challenge is that our clock doesn't start right. When we first refresh the page, right, our clock doesn't start at the right time. It starts at 00001. And it seems like there's a 1 second delay before our clocks gets updated. How do we solve the problem? I guess I need to first illustrate the problem to you. Like, for example, if I refresh, it's going to start the wrong time for a split second before it gets to the right time. So that's challenge 1. How do we fix this problem? All right, how do we fix this problem? Challenge number 2, let's go crazier with the clock. All right, our clock right now only has 1 background color, or 2 if you press the button. But what if I want the clock to go crazy and be like, every time it takes, it changes the background color, so it looks more fun. And the way that one of the way you might get to that is through some random number generator. Get a random number, try to make it into a hex code, and try to set that as a background color. And again, Google is the best friend, and don't hesitate to go to Google, because I think that's a lot of learning takes place on the search engine. And yeah, thank you. I think that is all, and I think we're gonna just chill in here. And thank you all for coming. We'll hang here for another 30 minutes. Okay, a question is, why don't we need a return to in our function? So the purpose of return inside a function is to give a value back, right? And we don't really need to get any value back to the set interval or the event. They don't expect you give anything back. So we don't need a return inside a function. You just don't return anything, and the caller of the function don't get anything back because they don't expect you to return anything. And yeah. Okay.